Okay, so I'm ready to brew here, and before I start I wanted to talk a bit about the water. You want to use nice clean water without chlorine in it. So if your city uses chlorine in it, which many cities do, you're going to want to just let the water sit in the pail for 24 hours before you brew, or take the pump and run the air through the water for half hour or so right before you start, and that'll dechlorinate, that'll off-gas the chlorine. Now, if your city uses chloramine in the water, which cities are starting to do more, that is more difficult to off-gas. You actually have to use either some vitamin C, which is ascorbic acid, or some humic acids to help tie up the chloramine, which is chlorine and ammonium. Now, I've never found great advice on how much to use, because it probably depends on how much chloramine you have in your water. But for the humic acids that I use, which is this liquid, or it's actually for a dry product I also have, I would use no more than a tablespoon. You don't want to use too much. So in this case, I'm using well water, so I don't really have to do it, but that's what you would do. And then I would probably get the pump running through that for a while if you have chloramine, you know, and just to kind of help tie that up. The other thing is I like to use kind of lukewarm water. It doesn't have, not hot or anything like that, but I just don't want the compost and microbes to have to go into some like icy cold water from the tap. So this water is just kind of, it's a little warmer than room temperature. Now to look at the pump, I've assembled it here. And what's going to happen is you see all these, this is just this design. You know, there are many different designs, but all these holes, this is going to sit on the bottom and it's going to bubble air up through the whole thing. It does a really good job. And this piping here attaches to this, which attaches to the pump, and it does a really good job of bubbling water through the whole thing, so there's no anaerobic pockets. So I'm going to get that right on the bottom. I guess I better turn this around. And that's going to work perfectly. So for my ingredients, I'm just going to put my compost in, put my foods in, start the thing up right away. And that's about all there is to it. You know, if you were using other foods instead, if you were doing your own brew, you know, you just do everything right at the start, other than the mycorrhizal fungi and the yucca, like I said before. Now I actually do another tip, which is I also put in 1 to 2 tablespoons of EM. I forget now, I figured out before what would be more appropriate, but somewhere in there. And what that does, I hope, is if there happens to be any anaerobic pockets that form in here, and it shouldn't, because I know this is a good brewer, but I'm hoping that these facultative anaerobic microbes that are in EM will get into those pockets. You know, the lactic acid bacteria, the yeast, and all those guys are going to get in there and make sure that no bad anaerobes will take over the brew. So that's just a little tip. Plus, I like to make sure that the microbes that are in EM are in here. They may be in the compost, but I don't know. So let's see, is there anything else I want to talk about before I start this brewer up? Oh yeah, the other thing I didn't mention was all of your piping, your bucket has to be very clean before you start. And in the next video, I'll show you how to clean it, because this will be done and it'll all be dirty, and I'll show you how I clean it. It's not a big deal, but it's very important to clean it right away. So I think I've said everything there. So let's start this up. You want your power cord to go up from the pump a little bit, because you don't want water to travel down the cord to your socket. So that's nice bubbling. And again, you know, if you're making your own brewer, you think you could just look at it and say, oh, that looks like enough air, but really you still have to test. You know, it's all about the biology. It's all about actually confirming that it works. That's why I like to use this brewer. So put the compost in this nice handy bag that keeps it clean. My water will start to turn nice and brown. and I put my foods in. And I'm going to leave this for 24 hours, this particular brewer. And then when it's done, I will show you how to clean it up and how to apply it, how to apply the compost tea to the garden. So you can see how that amount of water and air moving through that water is going to create an environment where the microbes can breathe, and you can see how it's going to pull them off of that compost, because like I said before, they're going to be held onto that compost pretty tightly with the glues and the things they excrete. So that's going to pull them off there. Then the food that we put in, the molasses, everything that goes in there is going to give them food to eat, and then they're going to multiply. So we're really multiplying microbes here, just like we do in compost. The benefit of this is that we can apply it to the leaves, and we can apply it more often. Compost runs out. You usually don't have too much compost. But if you just have a little bit of good compost, I could do this every week or every month if I want to. So that, if the old method, if you're just stirring it around, it's not going to pull the microbes off, it's not going to keep them in an aerobic environment, and it's not going to feed them very well. And if you do feed them in that old way, if you do give them molasses, that's going to turn anaerobic very quickly. So many benefits to using this aerated compost tea.